It's time for today's Faceoff on Foxsoul. Our challengers, community activist Quanell X and former police officer, judge, and current criminal attorney Charles Big Angry Adams square up for the main event. Let's see who throws the first punch. Faceoff on Foxsoul starts right now.
Law and order is very important. The DPS situation was one in which we were able to bring more officers, more troopers, more law enforcement personnel into the community in order to help keep the community safer, and we saw it. We saw the fruits of that labor. So I would encourage, if there's a way to get back to that we do that again, that we have that strong collaboration. With regard to disappointments, I'll just tell you, where we sit in staffing today, I'm disappointed. And I want us to get back to a place where we have more Austin police officers out there.
A Texas police chief will retire, citing personal reasons. The police union says defund the police movement stripped staffing and led to a shortage on the streets of the state's capital city. Across America, homicides are down from last year to the first half of 2023. Gun assaults also down from last year. But compared to 4 years ago, violent crime is up nearly 24%. So what gives? Here's Charles Big Angry Adams.
Quanell, we are 4 years into this abolish the police, abolish prisons, absolute nonsense. My hometown, Austin, Texas, their chief of police retired last week, and the police union is shouting about the incredible abandonment of the citizens of Austin, Texas. Moreover, the city council and the mayor decided that they no longer wanted the state, the Department of Public Safety, assisting the undermanned, outgunned, and understaffed citizens of Austin, Texas, a city that used to be one of the safest large cities in this country. And it is all downstream from failed policing reform policies, which I am all for police reform. We need to end the war on drugs. There's a lot of stuff we need to fix in policing. We need cameras on cops, but damn it, we don't need a reform movement that just tells victims they don't matter, because who suffers the most? Poor people of color.
The movement in America to defund the police was controversial in the beginning and is still controversial to this day. Many council members, including those right there in Austin who supported it, turned around and voted against it because they understand we need good police. We need good officers on the streets doing their job. But the activist movement in America is saying, let's stop funding bad cops and let's use resources to punish bad cops. And had the police been doing a better job in investigating and punishing bad police themselves, there never been a movement in America to defund the police. Except some accountability police officers. They changed the budget in 2019, yes, but they gave them back the money in 2021. So let's not blame defunding the police on this. Austin has gotten bigger with all of these corporate companies coming into Austin. The population has grown. They need more officers. But don't sit back and lie, police union, that this is solely because of the call to defund police.
Well, it's not the police union that's apparently lying. Apparently it's me, Quanell, because I will tell you they canceled cadet class after the cadet class, and you have a city government. It's not just here. Look at San Francisco, Oakland. The NAACP in Oakland has put a public letter saying, hey, we need more law enforcement. You have abandoned us. A $1.8 billion project in San Francisco has been abandoned because they can't stop the tidal wave of crime.
Charles,
over it.
what we need is funding to hire better police officers. Let's increase the pay of police officers and more officers would join. But we also need Police Citizens Review Board with subpoena power to investigate those cops that make things that are wrong look right and right look wrong. Those citizen review boards can punish those cops and police them, but give those police review boards subpoena power to rid the ranks of bad cops. That's the funding that should go toward those activist groups. But keep funding the police department. But these bad cops, they gotta go, man.
It's amazing that now you're not a defund the policer, but if you want to supervise police, something I've been advocating for 2 decades, right, is cameras. Cameras protect good police from bad people and good people from bad police.
We watched Eric Garner die on camera and they were still found not guilty. We watched other cops gun down black men in America and they were still found not guilty by all white juries.
You don't believe in the American criminal.
I believe that we need cameras. but we also need a judicial system that is fair and equitable for all citizens. And we need cops that are bad to be policed by the good cops. Let's end the blue wall of silence that protects bad cops, and you wouldn't have a call to defund the police department.
I absolutely disagree with the concept of the thin blue line. You are absolutely right, Quanell, that good cops should be angriest at the bad cops, the criminals. But the real problem in America is that we need to redefine the concept of criminal, right? What we have done is we have told people if you possess a small, and you're pro-war on drugs, which has always shocked me, but we catch people.
I'm pro-war on drugs against the real drug dealers, like the CIA, like those in corporate America and corporate giants who are getting rich for allowing fentanyl to come across the border, selling it to drug kingpins in Mexico and foreign countries.
But
I am pro-drug war when you're putting the right people in jail, not the poor drug addict on the corner who ain't got the power to do nothing.
But that's the end of it. It's low-lying fruit, felony arrest. It's way too easy.
Because that's what they wanted, Charles.
Okay, but who suffers the most?
Well, then go back and tell your white brothers who put those laws in place on Congress and in the Senate that was designed to punish poor people of color. Go back and tell them that you're doing this against black people. When they passed H.R. 3355 in the House, 3 strikes and you're out, they knew exactly what they were doing. You get a slap on the wrist for powder cocaine, but crack cocaine, you go to prison. They knew they were going after black people. They knew that.
I don't know why you had to trot out my race. It took you only about 5 minutes.
Because you got the complexion for the protection. Brother.
Okay, but the
Go
thing
talk
is,
to white boys
we
on
should
Capitol
be
Hill.
talking about subjects, not about our complexion, right? And the truth is,
but them
the
laws
war
are
on
designed
drugs
for that.
has been used to oppress black men for decades.
By
right?
who?
And
By who?
Most certainly by
who?
America.
Your corrupt, racist white brothers on Congress, in state legislative houses, and in the Senate.
I know that you decry bigotry while using bigotry as a tool.
I'm just telling the truth.
Just because I share the complexion with somebody else you dislike doesn't mean I have anything else in common with them.
I don't dislike your complexion.
I have been arguing for police reform for decades. We need cameras. We need to end the drug war.
You're arguing for police reform.
Yes.
But you all as white folks ain't never had to deal with corrupt cops like we do as black people.
You all.
So you're arguing for reform, but you've never had to suffer the consequences of being attacked for who you are in your community by corrupt police officers.
See, and
the best ones to explain reform would not be you. Let those of us who've lived this life of corrupt cops and violent police officers, let us tell America what that reform looks like.
See,
we cannot have somebody who don't look like us telling us what reform should look like.
Legitimate police reform, because instead of talking about how we fix it, like every time I go to these conferences to talk about police reform, I want to talk about how we fix it. It's all people, I need a fundraise for this, or my organization's better than your organization. It's all about a grift, right? But the truth is, you sit there and talk about the white experiences as some holistic experience, how every white person has had the same experience with cops, and it's absolutely not true. Being treated poorly by the police is what led me to want to be a policeman.
You ain't never been treated like black folks been treated. Quit kidding yourself, brother. You know that's a lie.
Migrant crossings and undocumented immigrants. The latest numbers for people coming to America from the southern border. Here's Quanell X.
Charles, a lot of people are upset by the new immigration numbers that just come out in July, where it says 33% increase for the month of July. It says, yes, we have a serious immigration problem, though the numbers are down from previous years, but the month of July was a huge spike. And a lot of people are angry in America, conservative Americans in particular, white Americans really, and some African Americans upset about this. But I think we're blaming the wrong people. We're blaming the immigrants when we should be blaming the corporate giants who want that cheap labor coming into America. We should be blaming those rich CEOs who pretend on the surface to want immigration change, but yet they're getting rich from the cheap labor that they employ coming across those borders illegally. But also, Charles, at the end of the day, why would we even call them illegal, to be honest with you? Because they're only coming back home. Texas, Arizona, and California was stole from the Mexicans. It was stole from our brown brothers and sisters. And so they're only repatriating themselves back to a land that was stole from their ancestors. So why should we call them illegal immigrants in the first place? We should treat those immigrants the same way the Indians treated the white immigrants who came here legally.
Well, the truth is that we're not calling them illegals anymore. We're calling them migrant crossers in this Orwellian new world where we use different words to try to make the truth not seem like the truth. And it's not just us white folks that are complaining about it. Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, has expressed his concern about the billions of dollars that New York's spending on just a few thousand migrants, where we're getting millions down here in the southern portion of the country. It's not just Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, California. And how many people, Chicago, activist organizations are heartbroken by programs for Black Americans being defunded because those resources are being moved away to people that entered this country illegally. Free housing, free food, free education, all sorts of things that we're not doing for Black America.
But that's the scheme. And that scheme is designed to pit Black Americans against the brown brothers and sisters in this country who are trying to come here, quote unquote, illegally. Those Black organizations were never funded properly and accordingly in Chicago. Those Black organizations were always underfunded in Chicago. So let's not pretend like the underfunding just started when those brown brothers and sisters are coming across the border. It's designed to have the brown man fighting against the Black man and the Black man angry with the brown man coming across the border, keep us fighting each other when the real enemy is the corporate giants who want that cheap labor, and the corporate giants on those on Capitol Hill and in Congress who've always underfunded Black organizations and institutions to help Black life better in this country.
You were talking about the city of Chicago, run by a Black mayor. They've got a Democrat-controlled House and governor. You're talking about New York, run by a Black mayor, Democrat-controlled state, right? Where you have, Republicans are doing some horrible stuff, right? In the last few months, Republican-controlled states, starting with Arkansas, are lifting the restrictions on child labor. And it's absolutely insane. It's about putting children to work like in industrial laundries in places that kids don't need to be, as if this is somehow 130 years ago and the Industrial Revolution, the protections have all gone away. And they're doing that, Republicans are doing that because they need the cheap labor. In Florida, under Ron DeSantis and his new policies about making it a felony to have an illegal entrant in your car with you, right? So now labor is fleeing the state of Florida. So I'm not saying the Republicans are getting it right. But what we need to reform. We don't fix anything in this damn country. We don't fix it. The Democrats don't, the Republicans don't. We need to streamline the immigration process for lawful people.
You're not going to fix the immigration problem, Charles, for two reasons. One, the liberal Democrats want the immigration reality to continue the way it is because they're hoping that one day they will become new Democratic voters, because they make their party seem to be lenient and loving and compassionate toward those immigrants when they don't really give a damn about them. Secondly, the Republicans are not going to do anything about it because the rich philanthropic groups and organizations and those men and women at the top, the financial giants, finance the Republican Party and the elected officials, and they're the ones who are benefiting the most from that cheap immigrant labor that is coming across the border. What's happening is they're making the poor white, the poor brown, and the poor Black men believe that it's a sincere problem for us, while the rich fat guys on top get rich and we stare at each other. We're straining at a net while we swallow a camel. They're not the real problem. The money makers are the problem. They want that labor.
The Republicans, well, the truth is, did you not hear that just a few weeks ago, the Democratic Party welded the gates open in Arizona? And you saw a huge welded. There's a wall with gates to prevent people from entering illegal. And they said, we're going to weld it open. And the truth is, who suffers the most about our open border policy? Afro-Caribbean immigrants and African immigrants who work very hard to enter this country lawfully. But what the Democrats do is they slash the numbers of lawful migrants in it because of the great numbers of illegal migrants.
Who made the decision of the lawful migrants and illegal migrants?
Well, the Democrats and the Republicans.
Because
they're working,
rich,
you're right,
powerful
they're
white
working
folk.
For the corporations.
Rich, powerful white folk. Why don't we settle the immigration problem? Why don't we ask the Indians to get involved with this discussion and let the Indian brothers and sisters, the Chiricahua, the Cherokee, the Seminoles, the Apache,
so you mean
let
the,
them tell
you mean
us
the Native Americans? You mean the Native Americans? Because the Indians are South Asians.
Inhabitants of America.
The Native Americans.
Let them tell us who's an illegal immigrant or not.
Well, the truth is, Quanell, but we need to accept the world as it is, engage in a little presentism, and fix the problems.
But you're talking about
you're talking about fairy tales. Well, we need immigration reform.
You're the original illegal immigrant.
Up next on Faceoff on Foxsoul, it's the final round for both Quanell X and Charles Big Angry Adams. But a big-name Dominican baseball player in hot water for being accused of having an improper relationship with a minor. And it's not just one allegation. Two teens are accusing the Rays star for it. Let's talk about it. Here's Charles Big Angry Adams.
Quanell, in the wild world of professional sports, we've heard some very horrifying allegations the last couple of weeks at the intersection of sports and social media. Wander Franco was given an unprecedented deal. Typically, you've got to play a few years and then you get that big deal in professional baseball. But the Rays recognized that this talent was so immense, they gave him a $182 million extension right out the gate. People are always talking about a Hall of Fame career. And it seems like he was put on administrative leave, not by his team last week, but by baseball, because social media statements by children that they were having, one in particular was having a sexual relationship. There was another allegation that he's had a child. I've heard allegations that the one who broke this story was only asking for $200,000 in a Mercedes, and now he might lose the overwhelming majority of $182 million because he didn't want to take care of his victims. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, things are different in Latin America. And in the age of consent, it varies everywhere. But in the Dominican Republic, it's 18 years old. This is a young man, but far too old to be having sex with 14-year-old girls, and this is probably the end of his career.
Charles, we have to be very careful with such subject matter because it involves children, it involves adolescents. But at the same time, you are a defense attorney. You should maintain the decorum of what defense attorneys do for their clients all the time. Let's afford it to him. He's innocent until proven guilty. An allegation don't make you guilty. But for this young woman to say, I want $200,000 in a Mercedes, well, then next week she'd want $400,000 in a Rolls Royce. If he's not guilty, don't let yourself be financially exploited and blackmailed, or white-mailed, I like to call it, for money when you don't deserve to go through that. We don't know if he's guilty or not, but I will say this. There may be others involved who are encouraging this young woman to financially exploit this man. But if he's guilty, then pay the price. But let's give him the same benefit of the doubt that we give American sports figures who've been accused of child molestation and treat him by the same cord that we treated them. Because there's white baseball players, Wetterland, and some others who've been accused of the same thing, and we gave them benefit of the doubt. Let's do the same thing for him, unless we see that he's really guilty.
Well, you might have given him the benefit of the doubt, but you seem to misunderstand the concept, right? And I'll tell you, I disagree with the concept of believe all women or believe all victims. It was trotted out when they were the Democrats were seeking to subvert the outcome of a presidential election and subvert the outcome of a Supreme Court nomination. Now, I don't think you can believe all people that allege to be victims, but the math is very clear that it's about 94 to 95% of women who make outcries of sexual assault are valid outcries. But more importantly, everyone swirling around this seems to believe that he is in fact guilty. There seems to be a mountain of evidence, and I'm not the judge.
When the
I'm
police,
not the jury.
When the police have said in that country where he's being accused of this, that they have not even launched an official investigation yet, that has just gotten started this week. They'll have more information next week. They've appointed a special judge who has experience in these type of child sex crimes to be the special judge in this case. So where's the overwhelming evidence? All we have is overwhelming social media statements about him being guilty. But social media is one of the biggest liars in America and the planet. It's been the gift and the curse. But you're real sensitive when it's referring to Donald Trump and giving him benefit of the doubt. That racism came out. But the minute this brown-skinned black brother, who's a baseball player, is accused of raping some young girl or having an appropriate relationship, you bring up how much money he's making. But you didn't say about Donald Trump when he was accused.
Well, you must have me confused with someone else.
No, I got you right, brother.
I've been condemning Donald Trump since he first stepped into the political arena. I'm no fan of Donald Trump. I'm no Donald Trump voter. And I don't have any doubt that Donald Trump is guilty of sex crimes. But the truth is that in America, when we hear an allegation about a horrifying sexual assault, we look at it, the media and the people, through the prism of fame and power. We just saw an appellate court actually allow lawsuits to go against Michael Jackson's estate by two of his alleged victims. I love Michael Jackson.
And he was found not guilty.
I love Michael Jackson.
And he was found not guilty.
I am a product of I was born in the 70s, product of the 80s. He is a huge pop star, but he has multiple allegations.
He was found not guilty in trial by a jury that didn't even look like him. A jury that looked like you found Michael Jackson not guilty, then to turn around and say that these same individuals can now file claims against his estate is nothing but white folks being white folks.
Okay,
I'm sick and tired of brothers being accused of crimes of sexual assault and not being guilty. The same thing happened in Rosewood, Florida. Black men accused of raping a white woman, murdered men, women, children, and babies, and the black man didn't rape nobody. Same thing in Arkansas. Same thing in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Black man raped some white woman, and what? He's murdered and executed, and thousands of black folks died in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Wasn't no rape whatsoever. Same thing happened right there with our brother Emmett Till.
Quanell,
Whistle at a white woman, they lynched and murdered.
That you're worried about my point because you interrupt me and you fail to let me talk. I agree Michael Jackson was found innocent. I was talking about the public perception where people that are typically horrified at allegations look at it through the prism of fame and wealth and power and say, well, I'm not so sure. Wander Franco, there are fans of the sport. And when an athlete is accused of something, people, white, brown, black, every color, are reticent to believe a victim because the person's famous.
Not with Ben Roethlisberger.
Right. Well, Ben Roethlisberger, there was an overwhelming amount of evidence. She made an immediate outcry. You see, you make these assumptions about my positions on sexual assaults, which I, as a police officer, investigated based on my skin color. The only person at this table that forms his opinions based on skin color is you. You're the only bigot here. The suggestion, you just assume that I support Trump. You just assume I support Roethlisberger.
Of a group of people who are the victims of America's bigotry. And our only concern is this: let this man have benefit of the doubt until we find true evidence that he's guilty, and if he's guilty, punish him. But I'm not with this public perception about him being guilty, because the public perception of black men
is backing
when we
the athlete.
We're guilty.
That's what happens.
The public perception of black men, when we're accused, we're automatically found guilty.
But the thing is, that's not the truth, right?
That's the public perception.
Not in 2023.
That's
what
the public
defines
perception.
it is fame and wealth. There's a mountain of evidence, and beyond a reasonable doubt,
you know what?
The presumption of innocence, that
goes
to the court of law
too.
and not the
you
public.
Got a point. OJ
was absolutely
too.
a murderer.
The jury said not guilty.
And now to the final round.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for watching Fox Faceoff, but I also want to encourage all of us to do several things. Let us always give each other benefit of the doubt when an allegation has been made, like made against this great baseball player. If he's guilty, he should be punished. But let's not throw this man under the bus until we have the facts. To the police officers in this country, if you don't want a defunded police movement, well then why don't you start a movement called Breaking Down the Blue Wall of Silence, and we start prosecuting and exposing the corrupt cops and bad cops among us, so the community activists and the community don't have to do it themselves. The minute we see you doing it, there won't be a call to defund the police, there'll be a call to give you additional funding. But the problem is your blue wall of silence has allowed this festation of corrupt cops to grow, and that's why the community is angry and asking for something that appears to be outrageous to defund you, but you brought that on yourselves. Least but not last, Charles, my concern with America's immigration policy is it's hypocrisy, because you always want to point to the little brown brothers or black brothers and sisters coming across that border because they don't want America to become more of colored men and women in this country. So they really point to their immigration of brown people come across those borders because they got a problem with us. If that was white folks crossing them borders, they wouldn't talk like that.
Quanell, I absolutely disagree with almost everything you said, per usual. But let's start with the issue of fixing policing in America, right? 22 years ago at Harvard Law School, I wrote a thesis talking about how the war on drugs, aided by the Rehnquist Court, and that was, of course, the Supreme Court in the 80s and 90s, was designed to facilitate the oppression of black men, right? Poor people of color in large urban areas, right? The constitutional protections on search and seizure have been watered down for decades, and it's only a vehicle of oppression. If we end the war on drugs, allow people to go by, say, and narcotics destroy lives. Narcotics are horrible. Not all of them. I don't think marijuana is, but alcohol is far worse than most. But we see people dying every day, and it's couched in the media largely of white people, but if you look at the numbers of black people dying from opioids, it's horrifying. And the reason people are dying is because they're buying drugs on the street that aren't what they think they're buying. And if people were treated with some individual liberty and they were said, hey, go buy what you want to buy, do what you want to do. If it gets to be such an issue that you're in the streets and we need to get you, let's put you in a rehab and not a prison. So many young black people have lost careers and opportunities because the stain of a criminal conviction, the stain of a drug conviction, when it never should be a felony. And it's absolutely horrifying. Let's talk about immigration. Who suffers the most from the tide of immigration in this country. You're right, Quanell, it's not the corporations. They benefit on the labor. It is not slavery, but it is slavery adjacent and it's horrible oppression. But the real people that suffer the worst are Afro-Caribbeans, and people in Africa, people in Asia who have all this incredible difficulty lawfully migrating because we need to reform immigration laws. It's really horrifying, Quanell.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, we know what time it is.
That's it for the Face-Off on Foxsoul. We'll catch you next time.